So today we're going to look at a pen that, well, is a really nice pen and kind of a lucky find for me, and it's the Pelikan 12 Silvexa. So it was, as far as I can tell, released in February of 1965, and it was of a line that one of the first cartridge converter pens. Usually the Pelikan have a piston and piston fillers at that point. So this is yeah, so from around February 1965. Not too sure exactly when this pen was made, but that's when the pen was released. And it was inspired by the fact that the student brand Pelicano had a pen very similar to this, and it was doing very well. So they made a higher end version of it, just using higher quality materials. And it's one of their Pelikan's first converter cartridge pens. So when you first look at it, it's a very simple design, but it's also, you know, very much inspired by this pen here, in my opinion, and that's the Parker 45. Of course, the Parker 45, you see lots of other pens from different manufacturers being inspired by this. It's Parker at that time was almost one of the leaders in design, I would say. The Parker 51 was another pen that all kinds of manufacturers were inspired by and brought out variations of pens inspired by, you know, the hooded nib and the streamlined look and, you know, simpler materials. The Pelikan is a bit shorter than the Parker 45, and it's a little bit wider in some parts, and the cap is, of course, smaller. Of course, the Parker 45 always had, you know, the classic Parker arrow. Pelikan, when you look at the clip, you can see that it's actually, you can sort of see the Pelikan bird profile in the clip, you know, the wider head and the beak, of course, that is so famous with Pelikan. On the cap here, on the band, it says Pelikan Silvexa, Pelikan 12 Silvexa, and it's a German pen, of course, Pelikan. And it's a pull cap, and when you see, it's a hooded nib, semi-hooded nib. And it's actually quite a large nib for a hooded nib. There's when I'm holding it, you know, the interesting thing is, even though it's inspired by the 45 here, this feels richer in some ways. It might be the word I'm trying to say here. It just feels like it's a higher quality material, resin or whatever it's made of. And it is also, you know, even though it's a gold-plated steel nib, and this nib has seen better days, it's on this, but it's still actually a very good writer, this one here. So what I would say about the nib on this is that there's a surprising amount of spring compared to the 45. Like the 45, I'm not going to do it, but if you turn the nib just a bit, turn the nib, and it'll unscrew it. It pulls out. So it's very easy to remove the nib and the feed. And when you take it out, you'll see that the Parker 45 and the Pelikan 12 Silvexa, there are similarities in their feed design. It's very simple, and it's very elegant. Easy to take out, easy to clean. You can replace the nibs easily. But I haven't thought about replacing this nib because it still works quite well. Now, when I did get the pen, there was one issue with the nib. And as you can see, there's some plating coming off this nib. But what really was the first thing I noticed was that the tines had sprung. So there was a big gap in between the tines of the nib. That is actually wasn't that bad a problem. There's a way of fixing that, and what you do is you carefully take the pen and you put it one side down with the, you know, like this, with a tine. I would use a hard surface, of course. This is leather. I wouldn't do it on this. but you put the tine down and you slowly turn, and you kind of keep doing that, and then you work the tines back together. You almost cross them over in some ways when you're doing it. The lower one crosses, under the top one in a way, and you do that carefully. You can also use your fingernail to do it, just carefully turning it. There's videos online showing you how to do it. That's how I found one. I forget who it was I was looking at, but it was quite helpful, and I was able to get the nib realigned, and that allowed the ink to flow freely in the nib now. So what I really like about this pen, it's like I say, it's well made. There's an ink window in here. You can't really see it at the moment. There's a silver band here in the section. And the ink window, it allows you to see how much ink is in there, and it's also quite pretty. When you unscrew it, I put in a modern Pelikan converter. It still fits. The side, even though this is modern and this is from 1965, it still fits. That's a nice thing about Pelikan. And it's a very nice writer. I put in Ferris wheel press. I put in the new Ferris wheel press Roaring Patina Black, and it's quite a nice ink. It's new to me, and I'm just starting to use it. And we're going to do a little writing sample. So, quick. Jumps over the lazy dog, right? So it's a very wet writer. It puts down a lot of ink. I wouldn't say it's a fire hose, but it gives you a nice flow. The ink also seems to write. It has the Ferris wheel press Roaring Patina Black also seems to have a really nice flow to it. I find it wet. I put it in another pen, Lamy CP1, and it also has a nice flow to it. So that's quite nice. I like that a lot. The pen, when you even though it's a steel nib, I find there's a lot of line variation, as you can see there, right? Downstrokes are nice and broad. Cross strokes are nice and thin. The feed keeps up really nicely. It's railroading there, but I'm pushing hard. And, this, I'll be honest, this nib has had some issues, some damage done to it. The plating is starting to wear off, but it's very smooth. It's not scratchy in any way. It's very smooth. I got this in an eBay find. You can still find them around. I got this for a very good price. I'm not going to say how much, but it came in a group of 3, so I was very happy and lucky to get it. And you can still find them online. They're getting a little pricey, but they're well-made pens. They're classics in design. Now, talking about the fact that it's classic in design, I want to just look at a couple issues with it. It's interesting. It's one of that period, where they, here's the Parker 45, here's the Pelikan 12, roughly from the same period. The Parker 45 is maybe a little earlier. These are no longer made, but a pen that came out a year later in 1966 is still being made. And that's the Lamy 2000. And you can sort of, oddly enough, see similarities in design. The Lamy 2000 is a bit thicker pen and a little bit bigger. Actually, it's quite a bit bigger when you see it. These are all these are streamlined thin pens. This has been in production since 1966. Pelikan has gone on to create many beautiful designs since then, and come out with variations on this design that went up into the 70s. But they're no longer made. Whereas the Lamy 2000 is the survivor from that period. Parker, of course, has gone on to make, still makes pens. They're quite lovely, but they have sort of fallen back a bit. They're no longer the leading design. They're not leading design like they used to. Right? They make lovely pens, but in some ways they've become forgotten. Pelikan, on the other hand, has gone on to become one of the brands of, Grail pen status in some ways. People, if they talk about their Grail pens, it's often a Pelikan. But if you're looking for a Pelikan, and the modern ones are too expensive, the vintage ones, especially from the 60s and 70s, can still be found at very good prices, and they're lovely writers. This is a gold-plated steel nib, and it's a beautiful nib. Compared to a modern steel nib, compared to a modern gold nib, this has a lot of spring and bounce and line variation to it, and it would almost, be considered a flex pen by today's standards. But even though I wouldn't push it too hard. But yeah, if you're interested in a Pelikan and you would like to have one in your collection, and you might find the modern ones a little outside your comfort zone, go looking for the vintage Pelikans. You can look up, I would suggest you look online first and do some research about what one you would like, and then hunt for it. And then you might get lucky. You might find a real treasure. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you subscribe, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. All those things help. I'm slowly growing the channel. I'm getting closer to my goal of 1,000 subscriptions. So, I set a goal when I started, and slowly getting there. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I invite you to follow along as I keep rambling through videos. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.